The wedding veil was stained with blood before the bride ever reached the altar. Isabella Carter stood frozen in the center of the ancient cathedral, her trembling fingers clutching a bouquet that had already begun to fall apart. Around her, terrified guests crawled beneath pews as gunfire echoed through the massive stone hall. Priceless stained-glass windows exploded into thousands of colorful shards, raining over white marble floors that quickly turned crimson. This wasn't a wedding. It was an execution. The groom's family had arrived with armored convoys. Their enemies had arrived with assault rifles. Neither side cared who survived. A masked gunman grabbed Isabella by the arm, dragging her toward a side exit. "You don't belong to him." Another burst of bullets interrupted the sentence as the attack intensified. Before the kidnapper could move another step, a black-clad figure appeared through the smoke. One shot. The masked attacker collapsed instantly. The mysterious man didn't even look at the body. Instead, he looked directly at Isabella. Even through the expressionless black mask covering half his face, his gray eyes carried something impossible. Pain. Not fear. Not anger. Pain. He reached toward her. "Stay behind me." His deep voice remained calm despite the battlefield surrounding them. Dozens of armed men instantly formed a protective circle around him, firing with disciplined precision. Every movement revealed military-level coordination. Every order was obeyed without hesitation. Whoever this man was, everyone feared him. Within minutes, the cathedral became silent. The surviving attackers fled. Ambulance sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. Bodies covered the entrance. Flowers floated across pools of blood. Only then did the masked man finally remove his gloves. One of his soldiers approached carefully. "The route is secure, boss." "Boss." The single word made every remaining guest lower their eyes. No one dared look directly at him. Isabella finally understood. The rumors were true. The man waiting to marry her was the infamous monster. His real name was never spoken in public. People whispered instead. The Ghost King, the Devil of Raven City, the billionaire whose corporations appeared on magazine covers while his criminal empire ruled everything hidden beneath them. Adrian Devereaux. No photographs of his full face existed. No interviews. No public appearances without the black ceremonial mask that had become his symbol. Some claimed his face had been destroyed years ago. Others believed he wore the mask simply to terrify enemies. The truth remained unknown. And today, he had become Isabella's husband, not because she wanted him, because she had been given no choice. Only 12 hours earlier, armed men had entered her family's estate carrying a sealed contract, signed the marriage agreement, all watch her father die. Her family's business had collapsed beneath impossible debts. Every bank refused to help. Every investor disappeared overnight. By sunset, they had learned why. Someone had quietly purchased every debt they owed. One name appeared on every document. Adrian Devereaux. She refused. Her father suffered a sudden accident. He survived. Barely. The message had been understood. Marry the monster. Or lose everyone you love. Now she stood beside the most feared man in the country's criminal underworld while priests silently finished the ceremony interrupted by bullets. Neither bride nor groom smiled. Neither exchanged loving glances. Only signatures. Only silence. Only chains disguised as wedding vows. When the ceremony ended, Adrian offered his hand. She ignored it. The rejection did not seem to offend him. Instead, something almost resembling disappointment crossed his hidden expression before disappearing again. Outside the cathedral, hundreds of black luxury vehicles waited in perfect formation. Helicopters circled overhead. Snipers occupied surrounding rooftops. It looked less like a wedding procession, and more like the movement of a private army. As Isabella entered the lead vehicle, she noticed something strange. Every member of Adrian's security team watched her with unexpected respect. Not curiosity, not suspicion. Respect, almost as though they had expected her arrival for years. The convoy disappeared into the mountains, finally stopping before an enormous estate hidden behind iron gates and towering pine forests. The mansion resembled an old European castle more than a modern home. Cold, silent, untouchable. Inside, servants welcomed Isabella not as a prisoner, but as their queen. Fresh flowers decorated every hallway. Her favorite white lilies filled crystal vases. The grand piano in the music room displayed sheet music from the exact composer she had loved since childhood. Her bedroom shelves already contained novels she had read in university. Even the tea waiting beside the fireplace matched the rare blend she secretly ordered from one small cafe years ago. She hadn't told anyone about those preferences. No one. A chill ran through her body. This wasn't coincidence. Someone had known her. Intimately. She immediately confronted the head housekeeper. "Who told you all this?" The elderly woman hesitated, then quietly answered, "The master did." Isabella frowned. "That's impossible." The housekeeper lowered her eyes. "He knows many things about you." That answer only deepened the mystery. Late that evening, Isabella wandered through the mansion searching for another exit. Instead, she found a locked gallery hidden behind heavy wooden doors. One door had been left slightly open. Curiosity overcame caution. She stepped inside. The room stole her breath. Its walls were covered with paintings. Not landscapes. Not famous artwork. Dozens of portraits. Some showed her as a teenager walking home from school. Others captured her reading beneath an old oak tree at university. One depicted the day she adopted an injured stray puppy. Another showed her laughing during a rainstorm with friends. Events so private. She never remembered seeing a photographer nearby. Her heartbeat accelerated. Who had painted these? Who had watched her? For how long? Near the center of the gallery stood a glass display case. Inside rested dried flowers, movie tickets, a broken bracelet she had lost 10 years earlier, a faded blue ribbon from her high school graduation. Every forgotten memory of her life had somehow found its way into this hidden room. She stumbled backward in horror. This wasn't admiration. It felt like an obsession. A diary rested on a nearby table. Its leather cover was worn from years of use. She slowly opened the first page. Written in elegant handwriting was a single sentence. Year 1. Today she smiled at a stranger. I promised myself that one day I will become someone worthy of protecting that smile. The entries continued. Year after year. Every birthday. Every achievement. Every heartbreak. 10 full years. Someone had documented her life long before this forced marriage ever existed. The final page had been written only yesterday. Tomorrow she will hate me. But hatred is a price I can survive if it keeps her alive. Footsteps echoed behind her. She slowly turned. Adrian stood silently in the doorway, still wearing the black mask that had terrified an entire city. Neither spoke. Neither looked away. After several long seconds, he quietly said, "You weren't supposed to find this room yet." Before Isabella could demand answers, alarms suddenly exploded throughout the mansion. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors. Security teams rushed toward the front gates. A captain's voice echoed through the communication system. "Boss, we confirmed it." Adrian's entire posture changed instantly. The black serpents found the estate. He looked once toward Isabella, then toward the armed soldiers flooding the hall. His next command stunned everyone. "Protect my wife at all costs." Outside, hundreds of enemy vehicles emerged from surrounding forest. Missiles locked onto the mansion. The war had begun only hours after the wedding. But Isabella could think of only one question. If Adrian had secretly loved her for 10 years, why did he force her to marry him instead of simply asking? Missiles slammed into the outer walls just seconds after Adrian's order echoed through the mansion. The explosion shook the entire estate. Crystal chandeliers crashed onto marble floors while centuries-old paintings fell from the walls. Smoke rolled through the grand entrance as security teams rushed into defensive positions. This was no random attack. Someone had been waiting for Adrian to marry Isabella. Outside the estate, more than 100 armored vehicles surrounded the mountain roads. Black Serpent soldiers poured from transport trucks carrying military-grade weapons, turning the peaceful forest into an active battlefield. Inside, Adrian remained unnervingly calm. "Activate Protocol, Raven." Within seconds, reinforced steel barriers sealed every entrance. Hidden gun ports emerged from the mansion walls, and elite snipers took positions on the rooftops. The estate transformed into a fortress built for war. Isabella stood frozen. Only hours ago she had believed she was being forced into the life of a monster. Now she was trapped in the middle of a war she didn't understand. One of Adrian's captains rushed toward him. "Boss, they brought Victor Sokolov himself." Adrian's expression hardened. So, he's finally done hiding. The name meant nothing to Isabella. But every soldier in the room reacted with visible fear. Viktor Sokolov wasn't merely another mafia boss. He controlled half the illegal arms trade across Eastern Europe and had spent years trying to destroy the Devereaux Empire. Entire crime families had disappeared after challenging him. His reputation was built on cruelty rather than power. If Viktor had come personally, this wasn't an attack. It was an execution. Adrian turned to Isabella. Stay in the underground safe room. I'm not hiding while people die because of me. For the first time since their wedding, emotion flickered across Adrian's face. They are not here because of you. Then tell me why they are here. Silence. The hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. But Isabella noticed it. He was still hiding something. Before either could speak again, another explosion tore through the West Wing. Enemy commandos had breached the outer defenses. Gunfire erupted inside the mansion. The battle had reached them. Adrian drew a concealed pistol and moved with frightening precision, eliminating the first attackers before they could enter the hallway. His bodyguards followed without hesitation, forcing the enemy back room by room. He fought like a man protecting far more than an empire. He fought like a man protecting one person. Hidden behind reinforced doors, Isabella watched surveillance monitors showing the chaos unfolding throughout the estate. Then one screen caught her attention. A familiar face. Her father. A photograph displayed briefly inside a classified intelligence file before the camera feed disappeared. Confused, she searched Adrian's private office while the fighting continued outside. Locked inside a biometric safe, she discovered dozens of confidential files, most detailed rival mafia operations. One file bore her name. She opened it. Inside were school records, medical reports, university transcripts, travel itineraries, security assessments. Every major event of her life had been documented for 10 years. Tucked beneath the final page was another document. Protection assignment, client, Adrian Devereaux. Objective, Isabella Carter. Status, active for 3,652 days. Her hands began trembling. This wasn't surveillance. It was protection. She flipped through years of incident reports. A brake failure prevented before her 18th birthday. A kidnapping attempt stopped outside her university. An apartment fire extinguished before reaching her bedroom. A drunk driver arrested minutes before crossing her path. Every tragedy she had narrowly escaped. Hadn't been luck. Someone had quietly saved her over and over again. Before she could process the truth, a hidden recording device activated automatically. Adrian's voice filled the silent office. If you're hearing this, then I failed to keep the truth from you. She stared at the speaker. I made enemies the day I inherited this empire. 10 years ago, those enemies targeted someone I couldn't afford to lose. They believed hurting you would destroy me. Her breathing stopped. I've watched from the shadows ever since, not because I wanted to control your life, but because every year the danger grew worse. The recording ended abruptly as another blast shattered the office windows. Smoke flooded the room. Enemy soldiers had reached the upper floor. One masked attacker seized Isabella before security could intervene. Within minutes, she was dragged through the burning mansion toward Viktor Sokolov waiting outside. The rival boss removed his leather gloves slowly. So, you're finally the famous girl. He smiled coldly. You still don't understand why Adrian loves you, do you? Before Isabella answered, Viktor tossed a weathered photograph into her lap. It showed two young men standing beside a smiling little girl. The girl was Isabella. The young men were Adrian and Viktor. She stared in disbelief. They had known each other as children. Viktor laughed. We grew up like brothers. He stepped closer. Until your father destroyed everything. The words struck harder than the explosion surrounding them. My father. He exposed our father's criminal empire. Mine was executed. Adrian's father disappeared. Everything burned because of one honest journalist. Viktor's smile widened. So tell me, who ruined whose family? Before Isabella could respond, dozens of black helicopters appeared above the estate. Searchlights pierced the smoke. Adrian had launched his counterattack. Elite Devereaux soldiers descended from ropes while armored reinforcements stormed the battlefield from 3 directions. The mountain erupted into full-scale war. Amid the chaos, Adrian fought his way toward Viktor with relentless determination. Every obstacle disappeared before him. Every enemy who stood between him and Isabella fell within seconds. He finally reached the courtyard. Their eyes met across burning vehicles and collapsing stone walls. Victor placed a pistol against Isabella's head. One more step, and she dies. The battlefield fell silent. Rain began pouring over the burning estate. Adrian lowered his weapon. Every soldier watched in stunned disbelief. The man who had never surrendered anything was surrendering his empire. "I'll give you everything," Adrian said quietly. "The businesses, the money, the territory, the throne. Just let her go." Isabella looked at him in shock. He wasn't negotiating. He meant every word. Victor smiled. "I knew it." He turned toward Isabella. "Now you finally understand. You were never his prisoner. You were always his greatest weakness." Before anyone could react, a single gunshot echoed across the courtyard. Victor staggered backward. Blood spread across his chest. Everyone turned. The shooter wasn't one of Adrian's soldiers. It was Adrian's most trusted lieutenant, Marcus Hale. For 15 years, Marcus had been Adrian's closest friend. Now he stood with his pistol still raised. His expression was unreadable. Then he smiled. "I suppose it's finally time you learned who I've really been working for." The battlefield descended into chaos once again as Marcus turned his weapon, not toward Victor, but toward Adrian. Marcus Hale's gun remained aimed directly at Adrian. For 15 years, he had stood beside the most feared mafia boss in the country. He had survived gang wars, assassinations, betrayals, and bloody power struggles without ever wavering. Every captain trusted him. Every soldier followed him without question. Now every one of them stayed in disbelief. Marcus smiled as the rain washed blood from the stone courtyard. "You always believed loyalty couldn't be bought, Adrian." His finger tightened on the trigger. It couldn't. It could only be borrowed. Another shot rang out. The bullet ripped through Adrian's already wounded shoulder, knocking him backward. Before his bodyguard could react, Victor Socolo's surviving mercenaries opened fire again, plunging the battlefield back into chaos. Smoke swallowed the courtyard. Explosions echoed through the burning estate. Marcus disappeared into confusion. Dragging Victor toward an armored escape vehicle, Isabella broke free from the stunned guards and ran to Adrian. Blood soaked through his black suit, but he pushed himself back to his feet. "Seal every road," he ordered through gritted teeth. "No one leaves this mountain." Within seconds, helicopters lifted into the storm while armored Devereaux convoys blocked every exit. What had begun as an attack on a mansion became a citywide manhunt. Marcus had underestimated one thing. Adrian had spent his entire life preparing for betrayal. Deep beneath the estate, an emergency command center activated. Massive digital maps lit up the walls as surveillance drones tracked every highway, tunnel, and forest road surrounding the mountain. Within minutes, one drone found the fleeing convoy. Marcus wasn't escaping. He was heading toward an abandoned cathedral overlooking the cliffs. Adrian immediately understood why. That cathedral had once served as a secret headquarters of the old criminal alliance led by both their fathers. It was where everything had begun. It was where Marcus intended to finish it. Ignoring every doctor's warning, Adrian personally led the pursuit. Despite the danger, Isabella climbed into the lead vehicle beside him. "You should stay behind." She shook her head. "For 10 years you protected me from the shadows." She looked directly into his eyes. "This time, we face it together." For the first time since their forced wedding, Adrian didn't argue. The convoy raced through the rain. Lightning illuminated the abandoned cathedral as Marcus and Victor prepared explosives around the ancient stone structure. Inside, decades-old files covered long wooden tables. Photographs, financial ledgers, secret recordings, evidence that could expose politicians, judges, businessmen, and crime families across the country. Marcus laughed as Adrian entered. "You still don't understand." He pointed toward the mountain of evidence. "We never wanted your empire. We wanted silence." He revealed the final truth. Decades, an international criminal network had operated behind every major mafia family. Adrian's father had eventually refused to serve them. Isabella's father uncovered their financial empire while investigating government corruption. Both men became targets. Marcus had been recruited years earlier to ensure the truth remained buried forever. Everything that followed, the forced marriage, the attacks, Victor's revenge, had been manipulated to recover the evidence before it reached the authorities. "You weren't enemies," Marcus said. "You were the last loose ends." Before anyone could respond, he pressed a detonator. Charges hidden beneath the cathedral activated. The building began collapsing. Stone columns cracked. The ceiling rained debris. Ancient stained glass exploded inward. Marcus fled deeper into the collapsing structure, carrying the final archive case containing every original document. If he escaped, the truth would disappear forever. Adrian chased him alone. The collapsing cathedral became a deadly maze of falling beams and burning timber. Marcus reached the bell tower. Only one staircase remained intact. The archive case rested beside him. "So many people died protecting these secrets," Marcus said calmly. "They'll die with me." He kicked the case toward the edge. Adrian lunged. The case slid across broken stone. At the last possible second, Isabella caught it before it disappeared into the burning ruins. Marcus fired. The bullet sped toward Isabella. Adrian threw himself between them. The impact sent both men crashing through the weakened wooden floor into the lower level of the tower. The ancient bell broke loose above them. It crashed downward with tremendous force. Marcus looked up too late. The falling bell buried him beneath tons of shattered stone. The man who had hidden behind lies for decades died beneath the weight of the truth he tried to destroy. Across the cathedral, Victor attempted one final escape. He reached the cliffside where a helicopter waited. Before he could board, dozens of police vehicles surrounded the area. Not mafia soldiers. Law enforcement. During the pursuit, Isabella had secretly transmitted the archived evidence to an investigative task force using Marcus's own satellite communication system. There was no longer any way to bury the conspiracy. Victor lowered his weapon. For the first time in his life, he surrendered. Weeks later, the revelations shook the nation. Cabinet ministers resigned. Corrupt judges were arrested. Police officials, businessmen, and organized crime financiers faced public investigations after decades of operating in secrecy. The criminal alliance that had manipulated countless lives finally collapsed. Adrian made a decision no one expected. He dismantled the remaining illegal operations under the Devereaux organization, transferring legitimate businesses into lawful management and cooperating with investigators to dismantle the international network. Power no longer meant ruling through fear. It meant ending the cycle that had destroyed generations. One quiet evening, Isabella returned to the mansion gallery where she had first discovered the hidden portraits. The room looked different now. The paintings no longer felt like evidence of obsession. They felt like silent promises kept across 10 lonely years. She found Adrian removing the black ceremonial mask that had become his identity. For the first time, he stood before her with nothing left to hide. A faded scar across one side of his face, a reminder of the night he had nearly died protecting her years before. He watched her carefully. "I thought if you saw the scars, you'd see the monster everyone else did." Isabella stepped closer. "I've met the monster." She gently touched the scar. "It wasn't you." Years of loneliness, guilt, sacrifice, and unspoken love finally dissolved in the silence between them. The marriage that had begun as a prison became a choice. Not because fear forced it, because truth had finally set them free. Months later, they reopened the abandoned cathedral, not as a monument to crime, but as a foundation supporting families who had lost loved ones to organized violence. Above the entrance, a simple plaque carried the words that Daniel Carter had once written in his investigative journal. "The truth always survives those who try to bury it." As Adrian and Isabella walked away hand in hand, the city no longer feared the man once called a monster. It remembered the man who sacrificed an empire to protect the woman he had loved for 10 years. And perhaps the greatest question was never why he forced her to marry him. It was whether she would have survived long enough to discover the truth if he hadn't.